Well, now to the dramatic conspiracy to kill the Queen during a royal visit in 1970. Former Detective Superintendent Cliff McHardy claims Australian Republicans hatched a plot to assassinate the Queen by derailing her train during a tour of the Blue Mountains west of Sydney almost 40 years ago. He claims the government covered up the attempt amid concerns it would embarrass officials during a successful royal tour. The plot has sparked a frenzy with the British tabloids, and for more we're joined by our London correspondent Gavin Gray. Gavin, good morning to you from Lithgow to London. This is a hot story.
Yeah, it sure is. Initially appeared in the Daily Mail and from there has really swept on. Indeed, was speaking to the Palace earlier on. They said they'd had a few calls about this. I think it's because it's such an incredible story. At the end of April 1970, the Queen and Prince Philip were taking a train, as you say, from Sydney up to Orange, a farming town. And when they got to Lithgow, Blue Mountains area, apparently this log was wedged in place, a very large log. And the retired policeman says there's absolutely no way it fell onto the track by accident. The tracks had been checked just an hour earlier. Frankly, there was a huge embankment down one side. And if the train had derailed, there almost certainly would have been deaths. Now, the interesting thing about the whole thing is that actually he says the only reason that it didn't derail was because the train was going slower than normal, so it simply pushed this massive log about 200 metres along the track before it came to rest.
All right. Now, I just wonder if there's been any official reaction from Buckingham Palace. You know that they've been receiving calls, but any response at all?
No, they say they're not going to comment on alleged assassination plots 40 years ago. But what's interesting is it is actually thought that the Queen didn't know anything about this at the time, and neither did Prince Philip. And to be perfectly honest, there was the suggestion earlier to me this evening that actually she still might not know anything about it 40 years on.
Didn't seem to be troubling her at the time, and probably not now. She's a pretty tough lady. I'm going to come back to you in an hour with a theory on who might have been responsible, all right?
Cheers.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You haven't shared that with me this morning?
No, I haven't. I'm keeping it a secret.
Okay, keeping your powder dry.
It's worth waiting for, though.
All right, okay, after 7 o'clock.
Well, still on the rail theme and the dramatic conspiracy to kill the Queen during a royal visit in 1970. Former Detective Superintendent Cliff McHardy claims Australian Republicans hatched a plot to assassinate the Queen by derailing her train during a tour of the Blue Mountains west of Sydney almost 40 years ago. He claims the government covered up the attempt amid concerns it would embarrass officials during a successful royal tour. Well, the plot has sparked a frenzy with the British tabloids, and for more we're joined by former detective Cliff McHardy and our London correspondent Gavin Gray. Good morning to the both of you. First of all, to you, Cliff. You believe this, I mean, it's pretty basic plot, pretty rudimentary, but you believe it could have cost the Queen her life?
Well, I suppose if you're going to derail a train and there's passengers on it, anything can happen.
Who do you think was behind it, and do you have any evidence to support your theories?
Well, I never at any stage ever said that Republicans were behind it. It was one of those things we'll never know who was behind it. But I never ever said that.
All right, well, that's good information to have to clarify that for us. Do you have any theories of your own, though?
Sorry?
Do you have any theories of your own?
No, none at all. It was one of those things, if you didn't find the culprit, you'd never find out the motive.
All right, so were you told at any time by the government not to investigate?
Well, I wasn't told directly, but my superiors were, that the government and the boss of the CIB issued directions that to keep it out of the press if possible. Why
would they do that?
Well, that's something they could only tell you. Well, when you look at some of the background to it, if the press had got it, and nearly did in Lithgow, you encouraged other people to do similar things throughout the royal tour.
Is it a sign, perhaps, Cliff, that they didn't treat this with a great deal of seriousness?
Absolutely.
So they weren't serious about the plot?
Well, I don't know what the plot was except to derail the train, but the motives behind it I have no idea.
All right, I'm just wondering if it was a serious threat, then I would have thought they would have poured all sorts of investigators at it and tried to come up with who was responsible for it, because it might have happened again.
Well, it was one of those inquiries which you could never put to the individuals that you spoke to exactly what you were talking about. It's different if you've got a murder or a rape or something like that, that I'm making inquiries in relation to this and that, but you could never put that to the people you spoke to because it was all supposed to be hush-hush. They didn't want it released anywhere.
You think that it was perhaps more than just kids having a prank?
Sorry?
You think it was more to it than just, say, for example, kids throwing a log on the rails?
Oh, a lot more. It wouldn't be kids because the whole thing was pre-planned. I mean, it was done in the day, a very dark night, and the log would have had to been found by those involved, and that after that they came back after the pilot train had come through and then put the log on the line.
You had no leads, no suspects, no witnesses?
No, none whatsoever.
Oh, well, I guess the mystery will go on then. We'll go to Gavin Gray now in London, where it's causing a whole heap of a stir from Lithgow to London, as we said before. Gavin, any response, any official response from Buckingham Palace? Anything we can read into that as well?
No, they're saying that they're not going to comment on allegations that are about 40 years old. However, they have received numerous inquiries about this. My understanding is, incidentally, that at the time the Queen herself may have known nothing about what had gone on that night, and indeed, almost 40 years on, may still not know anything about that.
This sort of thing happen all the time for the Queen? These near misses?
Well, I think particularly when they go abroad, the royal family are very closely guarded. Of course, particularly today, security is taken so much more seriously. But as Cliff was saying, in the 1970s there would have been a train going in front to make sure the track was clear, to make sure there were no obstacles in the way, to make sure there was no one going to ambush them or whatever. And yet within that hour, that log has appeared, as I understand it, wedged on the tracks. So these things are taken very, very seriously. And also, I would just point out, in the 1970s, although Cliff there is saying, you know, he never mentioned Republicans or whatever. In the 1970s, there was big trouble in Northern Ireland, of course, with the IRA and the political troubles there. And who knows, an IRA sympathiser has been mooted as a possible suspect as well.
All right. What was Prince Charles doing at the time?
Well, as the Queen was 44, he was a young man. I don't think he was on the trip.
All right, thank you for that, Gavin, giving us the latest from London. And Cliffy had a big smile on his face then. You've waited a long time to tell this story, Cliffy, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Why? Why, Cliffy? All right, we'll leave it there for the moment. He has waited a long time to tell that story there. Thanks, Cliff. Thank you, Gavin. Lisa.
And thank you, Carl. Coming up, the new survey, excuse me, that claims Angelina Jolie is over the hill. Is the Hollywood...
Ye flame, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign, ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.